A red vehicle was driving at high speed during the night when it collided with a motorcyclist and fled the scene. After the impact, the motorcyclist was thrown several meters away, landing on the ground in critical condition. Gasping for his last breaths, he wondered if he had lived a good life. He concluded that he hadn't, remembering everything he had done throughout his life. He attended a local school, worked 7 years as a civil servant, and ended up as a motoboy at the age of 30. He regretted not having lived a worthy life, especially considering how his mother had sacrificed everything to give him a better life. She worked as a saleswoman, caregiver for the elderly, trader, and florist. Despite losing his father when he was young, his mother did everything she could to help him enter a good university. Sadly, she passed away a year ago due to pancreatic cancer, and he wondered if she would be proud of him when they reunited in the afterlife since she was all he had. As he lifted his gaze, he saw a small red light in the distance, which came from his father's pendant, the only possession left after his father's death. Despite being on the verge of death, the man decided to crawl toward the pendant with his last bit of strength, resigning himself to losing the last memory of his father. He crawled a few meters toward the pendant, with both legs broken, one arm immobile, and bleeding all over his body. Using his uninjured arm, he reached out and took the pendant in his hand, then he passed away, having given everything for the first time in his life. The pendant began to shine with a bright red light, and our protagonist's consciousness was sent to another body. He woke up feeling surprised because he was sure he had died in the accident. Suddenly, memories of his death and the body he now possessed filled his mind. He saw everything he had experienced in his previous life, along with the memories of his current body. He realized that he had been reincarnated into another body, and his name now was Jo Hwi. A man and a woman entered the room, delighted that he had finally woken up after 3 days of unconsciousness and pain. The woman mentioned being hungry but regretted not having anything ready for him to eat upon waking. They also mentioned they had not heard any news from Bang Dae. As he explored the memories of his new body, he learned that Bang Dae was a very powerful person who monopolized iron and salt throughout Anhui. He did it all to create the perfect sword that could be wielded only by a priest. Our protagonist expressed concern and doubt about whether someone like Bang Dae cared about people like them. The situation in the place was critical. They had nothing to eat and no money to pay for the next inspection. While they were conversing, our protagonist continued examining his new memories and learned that the crisis the people were facing was due to the actions of a faction called Fahrenheit. They were responsible for causing people to go hungry and become burdened with excessive taxes and debts. As he walked around the house, he observed his older brother clumsily practicing martial arts, his legs trembling, and his movements lacking finesse. He asked his brother where he had learned martial arts, and his brother proudly said that a soldier friend taught him in exchange for alcohol. He felt it would be useless to learn such deficient martial arts from his brother's drunkard instructor. Their conversation turned to the most difficult martial arts to learn in the Gudaiman faction. He's brother mocked him, thinking he was being foolish, and said that ordinary people like them could never learn those martial arts or even see those who practiced them. Reflecting on his brother's words, he realized that there were superior martial arts beyond what his brother had learned and couldn't help but call him an idiot rather than a brother. Disappointed with the people surrounding him, he decided to accept his new situation and live his life as Jo Hwi. Although he wished for wise martial artists like those in web novels, he was surrounded by idiots. Despite this, he was determined to live as Jo Hwi and survive in this new world. It has been 2 months since our protagonist reincarnated into his new body. His job in this new place is simple. In the mornings, he and his brother go to cut some wood, which they later take home to make charcoal. He is also responsible for receiving important people who come to see his father when he is not around. Their father has returned home several times with some money, which they use to buy food and survive for another month. However, neither of them knows where all that money comes from. During dinner, the mother confronts her husband about the money he's been getting, and he finally reveals where he got it from. He went to the town to ask a moneylender for 60 gold coins to feed his family. The mother realizes that the important man who has visited him several times is the moneylender her husband spoke of. Worried, she asks him how they will repay such a debt. The father defends himself, saying it was the only way he could buy some iron and food to help them survive for another month. The mother scolds him for doing this because if they don't pay the usurer, he will come and kill their whole family to collect the debt. The tired and frustrated man starts yelling, telling his wife that if she preferred to starve to death, then the food on their table was bought with that money. He reassures her that he will take care of the moneylender and tells her not to worry and eat something. As he analyzes the situation, he worries that he might die again. While eating, he notices a strange smell coming from the house. He looks around and realizes that the place has not been cleaned in a long time. He also sees his father eating in a somewhat disgusting manner, using his fingers to clean the food remains from his mouth. Frustrated with their unhygienic living conditions, he decides to solve the cleanliness problem. He asks his father for something made of animal skin. His father tells him that he had hunted a bear some time ago and kept its skin for later use. He decides to give it to his son. With the animal skin, he sits in the yard of their house beside a small fire, warming some wood. He applies glue and starts sticking the bear skin. His idea is simple: to make a few toothbrushes for his family to improve their hygiene. When he finishes, he shows his new invention to his father and teaches him how to use it. He tells his father that he invented a toothbrush. Although skeptical at first, his father decides to try it, and he immediately feels a freshness in his breath. He understands his son's idea, and together, they go to the town to sell the toothbrushes he had made. In just 2 hours, they sell all 250 toothbrushes for 2 silver coins each, making a total of 500 silver coins in 2 hours. Excited, they calculate how many toothbrushes they would need to make to repay the debt. They conclude that they must make a total of 3,000 toothbrushes. The next day, with the newly purchased materials, the family starts making the 3,000 toothbrushes to pay off the debt to the moneylender and save their lives. After a whole day of work, they manage to make the 3,000 toothbrushes and head to the town to sell them. However, upon arrival, they are disappointed as the merchants had overheard their conversation the other day and stole their idea, improved it, and were selling it in large quantities. He realizes that his idea had been stolen, but since they are in an ancient time, there are no laws against plagiarism. Both of them are worried, as they only have 15 days left before the moneylender comes for the money, and if they don't have it, he will kill them all. After the great failure they had with the toothbrushes, he thinks about another invention he could bring from his world and that could work excellently in this medieval world. He considers bringing electricity, steam machines, and firearm, but he doesn't know how to make any of them, so he dismisses the ideas. His younger sister interrupts his contemplation, asking if there's any water so she can wash her hair. He responds, asking her not to wash her hair since it takes about 2 hours to bring water, and if she wants water, she should find it herself. His older brother leaves the house to train his deficient martial art style, which annoys he a bit because his brother doesn't seem concerned about the family's current situation, even though they could be killed in 15 days. He prefers to focus on training. The sister approaches her other brother and tells him how amazed she is by he because he was able to calculate the materials needed for the toothbrushes in less time than it takes to drink tea, just like the big merchants in the village. The older brother comments to his sister that after he's illness, he has been behaving strangely and now seems much more intelligent, using difficult words when he speaks. He overhears the conversation and flatters himself, saying that for them, who have a more backward way of writing, he is a sort of genius for this time. He begins to remember everything he learned during his years at university and as a civil servant. Ideas start flowing in his mind, and instead of inventing something, he considers applying everything he learned about philosophy, politics, and economics in this new world. So, he starts writing his ideas on the ground. His siblings only see him writing strange words on the dirt with a stick, and he knows he has a clear plan in mind, but it's probably a very risky and dangerous idea. Determined, he goes to his father to ask him to leave the family Cho's blacksmith in his hands. His father refuses, saying that to be a blacksmith, one must have the spirit of an artisan. He sits in front of his father and tells him that he has an idea he wants to make a reality, and he asks how much money he can borrow. The father gets upset because, despite being in ruins, his son only tells him to go and ask the people who owe them for more money. He starts calculating, saying that he can use the anvil and his tools as collateral for about 30 silver coins, and if necessary, he can use his family as collateral, which would secure 300 silver coins. The father thinks his son has gone crazy, as using the most precious tools for an artisan as collateral to pay off a debt is atrocious. But using his mother and sister as collateral is even worse. He raises his hammer with the intention of intimidating his son, but he just looks him in the eyes with strong determination. The father wonders if he had always been so decisive and concludes that after that illness, he changed a lot, and maybe he has a plan like the one with the toothbrushes that can save them from ruin. He starts explaining his elaborate plan to turn the family Cho's blacksmith into the best in the region, establishing the reign of the Cho family's iron. The father is somewhat confused by what his son is saying, as he seems to not understand the current situation of the family's workshop, as acquiring iron ore is very difficult. He proposes to stop using iron ore to make the tools and start using ingots, which are the residue left from iron ore after removing impurities. The father is skeptical about his son's idea. He suggests buying ingots, which cost about 3 silver coins each, and lowering the price of the best-selling product for the farmers. His plan is to reduce the cost of all their products by 30%, including the iron plow. The father gets upset upon hearing such a declaration because a product as expensive as the iron plow which costs about 40 silver coins, will now cost 28 coins. He tells He that it's an absurd idea, as each plow takes about half a month to make, and selling it at such a low price would mean significant losses. He tells him that within that half month of work, the time spent on extracting iron ore is also included. By using ingots, the production time for a single plow would be reduced to just 7 or 4 days. The father exclaims that during those days, he would have to endure constant pain caused by the blacksmith's work, as all the work would have to be done by himself. He also points out that even a simple lumberjack earns 10 silver coins as a salary, and their work is not as physically demanding as what he would be doing for a week of constant work with fire and metal. He interrupts his father, saying that he wouldn't have to do all the work alone since nowhere in the region can they find plows priced at 28 silver coins. If word spreads, many more people will visit the workshop since any resold product would be even more expensive than what they offer, thus attracting a large clientele to buy their products. The boy opens his diary and continues explaining the rest of the plan to his father. They first need to hire 20 employees and distribute the work, which is not very common for an artisan who usually does everything alone. First, they will have coal burners, a job that he can explain to them. It will consist of a unit of 2 people working for 6 hours, changing shifts with another unit, making a total of 4 people handling the coal. Then there will be firekeepers, people in charge of keeping the furnace fire going. This unit will also have the same number of people, hours, and shifts as the previous one. Next, there will be the forgers, whose work will be the most physically demanding since they will be dealing with the anvil for 6 hours. They will need the most workforce, with a total of 4 people in 2 shifts, making a total of 8 forgers. The person in charge of training them will be the father, as they will be the core of the workshop's blacksmithing. Finally, there will be the molders, also trained and supervised by the father, just like the other units. This unit will consist of 2 people working 2 shifts, making a total of 4 people. However, since the workshop's initial scale is small, they will have to divide the work among themselves and expand in the future as the business grows up to 20 times its size. They will pay each worker a salary, with the coal burners being the least paid at 6 silver coins, firekeepers at 8, forgers being the highest paid at 12, and molders earning 11 silver coins per day. With everything covered, the employees will come easily to the workshop, and eliminating the cost of materials and worker pay, they will earn 60 silver coins a month, increasing that amount as the business grows. The father contemplates accepting his son's idea, as he would have to set aside his artisan spirit and think more like a businessman. His son gives the final blow by telling him that if he keeps working alone, he won't be able to lift their family out of ruin, and to do that, he has to stop pretending to be just an artisan. The father accepts his son's plan, saying that it's very convincing as he observes the expression of determination and confidence emanating from his son. Labor division is an industrial production system where all workers distribute tasks to improve productivity in a company, something that humanity has been using for centuries, and he is about to propose it in the medieval era of the New World where he lives. After his father agreed to give him control over the blacksmith shop, they head to the Dragonfire merchant's house to request a loan of 300 silver coins to start their work project. Upon arrival, they join the queue of people seeking a loan, but most of them are rejected, and the chances of getting the loan are very low. Therefore, he decides to enter alone to talk to the chief of the merchants and present his work proposal. Inside the room, he recognizes the man in front of him as Mr. Lee Jongjae, a kind and admired merchant. The old merchant asks he how much money he intends to borrow, and he simply replies with 300 silver coins. Mr. Lee analyzes he from head to toe. Seeing that he is dressed like an average villager, he decides not to accept his request and asks one of his guards to escort the young boy out. He hurries to say that in 3 years, Mr. Lee will regret his decision to lose connections with the largest blacksmith's house in the entire region. The man mentions several well-known blacksmith's houses that are considered the best in the region and asks if he comes on behalf of any of them. He only answers that he comes from the Choi family's blacksmith. The merchant becomes irritated, thinking that he has come just to waste his time. He then explains that he understands that the name of his family's blacksmith might not be familiar, and he wouldn't allow himself to accept a transaction like that either. He takes out his diary, where he has all his notes with the prices of the blacksmith's materials listed as collateral, totaling 90 silver coins. He also mentions that his father is about to receive 40 silver coins from a commission, and his mother will have another 20 silver coins, making a total of 150 silver coins to cover the first collateral. The rest will be paid using the lives of his parents, his older brother, and his own life as collateral. Mr. Lee analyzes the situation and He's behavior, concluding that he is not joking about anything he says. He decides to send some of his men to verify if the collateral possessions really exist and to double-check if everything the boy said is true. After all, if he fails to pay on time, he won't be able to recover the money invested with the collateral, and using them as slaves would be problematic. He responds that he is offering Mr. Lee the opportunity to make a deal. The man hastily tells He that it would be the other way around, as it would be an opportunity to make a deal with an unknown family. He hands over his diary to Mr. Lee, who is surprised at how a plow machine can cost a mere 28 silver coins and questions if he is really in his right mind to provide such low prices. He only says that if he gives up doing business with his family, he will have no choice but to go to the Milku White merchants, who are rivals to the Dragonfire merchants. This hits the old merchant's pride directly, and furiously, he decides to accept the boy's deal, agreeing to give him 1,000 silver coins with the only collateral being He's life. He can do whatever he wants with his life, whether it's becoming a slave or selling himself for the pleasure of others. The boy smiles and replies that it will never come to that. Then he puts away his diary and leaves the place with the 1,000 silver coins. Back home with his father, they start the next phase of the plan, which is to hire personnel. He had already prepared by placing a sign outside the house that says, "Hiring." When they open the doors, a multitude of people gathers outside the place. He decides to conduct interviews with each one of them, rejecting those who talk too much, are too old, have weak bodies, or are slow thinkers. Using his experience from various jobs and studies in his previous life, he hires personnel with enough skills to perform each task. Once the employees are selected, he proceeds to give them a written contract, asking them to accept and sign it. He explains the payment method, which involves working a 6-hour shift with different rotations per unit. Their salary can increase with overtime work or if they excel in their tasks. They will also receive a day off, and it will be paid as well. The villagers are surprised by the job offer and agree to work for the Cho family under the condition that they keep everything that happens inside the blacksmith's shop a secret. He divides all the men according to their physical capabilities for the assigned tasks. The coal burners will be personally trained by he himself, and the rest of the workers will be trained by the father of the Cho family. Days after hiring the 20 employees for the Cho family's workshop, they began their training process to reach a minimum of 70% of the original quality. Mr. Cho is very demanding with his employees. He constantly watches over them, pointing out everything they do wrong while praising the more talented employees who learn more than he teaches them. He goes to the workshop to inquire if they were ready to start plow production, and his father responds that they still have a long way to go as they haven't even reached 50% of the original quality. The young man becomes concerned as the loan money is running out. They used it to pay off the debt with the usurer and to cover the employees' salaries for 20 days. If they don't speed up production, they will run out of money for food and employee wages. Then Mr. Cho asks the protagonist for 3 more days. He believes that within those 3 days, he will turn them into formidable artisans who can finally achieve 100% original product quality. 3 days pass, and he returns to the workshop, surprised to see that the inexperienced villagers from a few days ago are now skilled artisans who already reach over 70% of the original product quality. Mr. Cho feels proud as he had been doing all the work by himself throughout his life, and in just 3 days, he had trained people capable of making 22 plow pieces in a single day. Half a year has passed, and the production level of the Cho family's workshop has grown significantly during the last few months, allowing them to grow and he to wear expensive and refined clothing. The family's manager approaches his boss to give him the production report, and he explains that due to the large number of employees, he divided the workshop into 3 divisions. The Daisen residence houses the most experienced and skilled employees who manufacture iron plows and other products that require greater blacksmithing skill. This is one of the residences with the highest production level among the 3. The Sozen residence houses the new recruits responsible for making small and basic tools for the farmer's equipment. And the Gisan residence, the newest of the 3, is in charge of producing safes, carriages, and other technological products. According to the family's manager's reports, the Sozen residence has the lowest production and quality level of the 3. He asks the manager to encourage the people in the Sozen residence to improve their production quality. Before leaving, the manager informs Mr. He that a guest had arrived about 2 hours ago. He knows exactly who the guest is and hurries to meet him. He heads to the guest house where his special guest was, none other than the merchant who had lent him the 1,000 silver coins. The relationship between these two is very different from their first encounter, as they treat each other like lifelong friends. After a long friendly chat and settling some bets they had made, the merchant, whom he calls Jongjae, asks if he had resolved the problem with the sponsors. He replies that he needs some more time to think about what to do with that. Jongjae tells him that he won't be able to use the name of the Dragonfire merchants for much longer, as his family is expanding rapidly in the market, and soon they will realize that all the tools come from his workshop. This could become a serious problem if the officials find out. The merchant mentions that the merchants have united to protest in front of their businesses since the Cho family is monopolizing all the metal supply, leaving them without minerals for their own production. The protagonist suggests that the best way to solve the iron problem is to go directly to Mr. Bang and ask him to sponsor his workshop to obtain more iron. The merchant tells him that he will have to establish a connection with Mr. Bang as soon as possible, as the angry crowds of merchants could stand in front of the workshop's door. Here, the young man changes the subject slightly, asking the old merchant how much he thinks he has earned in a month. The man cannot guess the amount, and then the young man reveals that in just 1 month, he had a net income of 600 silver coins or 60 gold coins. The merchant is astonished, as not even his best traders have managed to earn that much money in a month of work. The young man tells him that he is not afraid of the officials as he has been bribing them periodically to resolve the problem they have with the sponsors. The real problem lies with the only clan the officials fear, not only because of their reputation but also because the strongest swordsman in Anhui belongs to that clan, the Nambang clan. After sharing the grand plan he has in mind, the old merchant panics, asking if something like that is even possible. He tells him about something he saw a few days ago while looking for a servant in the village. He witnessed a fight between 2 bandits who wanted to take control of a brothel. They showed impressive combat and martial arts skills, leaving the protagonist fascinated. He asks his servant who these warriors are. The servant responds that neither of them are warriors, they are simply bandits with good fighting skills. As the fight is about to end, they are interrupted by the leader of the Nambang clan, who scares them away with his intimidating presence. The bandits flee, and he is impressed, determined to go all out and head to the southern palace. After a pleasant chat, the 2 men reminisce about the day they first met. At that time, all he could offer was his great determination, and yet, the old merchant decided to lend him money. The old merchant only regrets giving him 1,000 coins instead of 10,000. Before leaving, the old merchant wishes his dear friend good luck, hoping that he can get the leader of the Nambang clan to become one of the main sponsors for the Cho family's workshop. The servant of the house calls the young master, saying that his father requested a meeting and to dress appropriately. The boy nods and goes to where his father is. At the meeting place, the boy wonders what is going on, and then his father comes out of the room, dressed in a white outfit and holding a purple case. The father sits in front of his son and tells him a story about their family and ancestors, specifically about an item that has been passed down through generations to all the leaders of their family. In a more serious tone, Mr. Cho has decided that it's his turn to pass on the leadership of the Cho family to his second son, Cho, as he has proven to be the one who brought life back to the Cho clan. With pride, he tells his son that he is the perfect person to lead their family into the new generation. He officially declares that the second son of the Cho family will be the new leader of the clan and will also receive the Crimson Jade Yushan. He has a deja vu of his past life, remembering the moment when his father offered him the same necklace in the same way. As he opens the case, he is amazed to see the same necklace that his father had given him in his previous life. The boy comes to the conclusion that if this is an object that has been passed down through generations as a family heirloom, it means that he might not have traveled to another world but perhaps inhabits the body of one of his ancestors. Several voices come out of the necklace, belonging to the Cho family's ancestors who had been the bearers of the Crimson Jade Yushan. Confused by the energy of the new bearer, they wonder what kind of being he is. They speculate that the boy might be a disciple of Buddha, implying that he has already lived during the Yushan era, which confuses the spirits since, if that were the case, he should be within the Crimson Jade with them. He gets scared and screams, telling his father that the necklace is talking to him. The trapped ancestors within the necklace are also surprised, as the new bearer can communicate with them, something that had never happened in previous generations. His father responds that when he received the Crimson Jade, he had a strange dream, and as it is not a common object, he asks his son to handle it with great care. He then stands up and leaves the room, leaving he alone with the Crimson Jade. Now, one of the ancestors inside the necklace asks for silence and starts talking to the new bearer, displaying an intimidating attitude towards him. The elder inside the necklace tells him that the fact that he can hear their voices means that the energy of his spirit correlates with theirs, but the only problem they have is that they cannot see his chain. He asks what chain he is referring to, and the ancestor tells him that he should have received a blessing from the Crimson Jade, one that would improve his abilities in exchange for linking his destiny to the Crimson Jade. In other words, he is bound by a chain to the necklace, and when his life comes to an end, his spirit will join the ancestors within the Crimson Jade. The boy asks what kind of abilities he is referring to, and the elder responds by saying that it depends on what he desires. If he wants physical abilities, the Jade will grant him a body capable of mastering martial arts and soaring through the skies. If he wants mental abilities, the Jade will give him a divine brain capable of mapping using the stars. If he seeks to become a great emperor, the Jade will give him the necessary charisma to conquer people, but if he instead seeks to be a noble man, it will bless him with the power of light to become a man who seeks the truth. He comments that he never received any blessing from the Crimson Jade, and the elder inside the necklace gets agitated, saying that he must have received something from the Jade since there is no way to explain how the energy of his spirit correlates with theirs. Then, he remembers the day of his death, and he comes to the conclusion that perhaps it was the Crimson Jade that transported him into Cho's body, but he doesn't know if it would be a good idea to tell his ancestors that he is a reincarnation. He only tells them that he had a strange experience a while ago, but he cannot be certain if the Crimson Jade was responsible for that, and that strange event is his life's secret. The ancestor responds that it seems the boy doesn't trust them. To calm him down, he tells him that they are simply his ancestors and cannot do anything to harm him, as they only exist as spirits without the ability to exert their powers in the physical world. Upon hearing the words of his ancestors, he decides to tell them the truth about himself and reveals that he has been reincarnated. The ancestors inside the necklace only laugh, saying that Sama achieved victory. Then the ancestors fall silent and say nothing more. The boy is confused by the situation, lifts the necklace, and wonders what is happening but is interrupted by his older brother who enters the room and asks him to accompany him to the southern palace. However, the protagonist refuses at first. His older brother pleads with him to let him accompany him on the mission to the royal palace, promising to follow him everywhere without saying a single word. He simply refuses, offering instead to give him a real sword. The offer is very tempting, but his older brother refuses and continues to beg him to let him come along. Their father, who was listening to the conversation, joins in and asks he to allow his brother to accompany him on the mission since he shouldn't bear the family's responsibilities alone, especially when his older brother is asking for it. He assures he that his brother won't say anything during the journey and will follow him everywhere. With no other option, he eventually accepts his father's request and agrees to take his brother with him, telling him that they will leave in a few days, so he better get ready. The manager enters the room and tells the young master that a crowd of people with weapons is at the house's door. The situation that the old merchant had planted earlier has begun. He goes to the courtyard to face the angry horde of artisans. Upon seeing their appearance, he deduces that they are the owners of other blacksmith workshops in the area, upset because the Cho family's workshop dominates the market with prices they simply can't compete with. They are furious at He's success and are determined to kill them all and rob whatever they find. He calms them down, explaining that he hasn't broken any rules and that everything he has achieved has been through his own efforts. He decides to show them around the workshop. Upon seeing the large workforce, anvils, and tools everywhere, the elders are amazed. Strategically, he offers them employment, asking for their help in fulfilling his dream of restoring Anhui's former glory. Touched by the young leader's words, the elder artisans decide to join his great enterprise, renaming the Cho workshop to the Anhui workshop. He orders his father to provide a detailed report to the new pioneers of the Anhui workshop. He turns the situation around, and his business keeps expanding. He then instructs manager Lee to finish the preparations for his new product, a carriage with technology never seen before in the region, something that will revolutionize the world once it hits the market and will put everything in the palm of his hand. Changing the subject, he tells manager Lee that tomorrow he will begin his journey to the southern palace. Lee tells him that he doesn't know how long he'll be gone, as he won't return until he fulfills his dream of making the Nambang clan his main sponsor. He leaves a notebook with manager Lee containing possible events that may occur while he's away and the solutions to those problems, instructing him to handle everything following the notebook's instructions. The next day, our protagonist and his brother set off for the southern palace. The journey is calm and silent, but to He, the fact that his older brother is accompanying him makes him feel like his brother has done nothing to help the family. His older brother knows what he is thinking and tells him that perhaps he hasn't acted like the older brother he should be. He is surprised to have such an intelligent younger brother who managed to turn the situation around with the villagers, making them join him, which impresses him. He feels strange about this situation and is moved by his brother's words. He also observes his older brother's arms and realizes that he has been training continuously for a long time. This completely changes his perception of his older brother, and they get along better. His older brother tells He that his dream is to become strong enough to protect their family, preventing a repeat of what happened a few years ago during the village's bad harvest when bandits infiltrated their house, attacked their father, and stole all their food. Since then, he has been training to be able to defend their family, which is why he is so passionate about martial arts. The ancestors of the Cho family begin speaking to He, who is astonished by their great intelligence and also criticized by comparing him to some of his ancestors. In his thoughts, He says that the only thing he has received from those elders is the jewel and criticisms about himself. Due to his spirit being linked to his ancestors through the Crimson Jade, they can hear his thoughts and get upset when they hear what he said about them. He is surprised that they can delve into his thoughts and hear everything he says. They proceed to explain that even though he doesn't have a chain, he is connected to his ancestors and their creator. He then manages to identify how many people are inside the collar just by hearing their voices, and he tells them that there are a total of 8, impressing them with his great intelligence. He says that in his life, no one had ever called him intelligent. They frequently said he was very eloquent or good at memorizing things. If he had been intelligent, he would have passed the official public exam on the first try. The ancestors notice that he doesn't recognize his great intelligence, despite demonstrating great wit. They then come to the conclusion that maybe it's a unique quality of a reincarnated person since he invented what is known as the division of labor, something that didn't exist in their time. Then the figure of the ancestor who always speaks for the others appears, saying that the boy is still not worthy to be the new king after Manhwa. Upon hearing that name, he is astonished because Manhwa was a warlord and the founder of the Cho clan. But the man corrects him, saying that he wasn't the founder, as the clan existed before he was born. Another spirit interrupts, saying that the boy is much better than the other descendants by far, referring to his siblings. Manhwa, also called Sao Sao, responds to the other ancestor, saying that it's not true because the boy only bribes people, and someone like him cannot carry the title of king. This comment annoys he, who replies that he would clearly use his money to hire employees, not using them as slaves or brainwashing them, unlike them. The ancestors get angry and start arguing in his mind, demanding apologies for being so rude to them. He decides to ignore them and observes his brother, who is reading a book about a great swordsman who lived many years ago. His older brother notices him watching and excitedly tells him the story of the great swordsman, a person who was able to defeat the Dark Outlaws, a very powerful clan in ancient times, situated in one of the safest places in the world, the Palace of the Dark Demon. He thinks that everything his brother is saying is an exaggeration. After his great feats, the swordsman disappeared, and no one ever knew anything about him, not even his past. He was nicknamed the Sword God. The ancestors of the boy, now calmed down, speak to him again, asking if he has questioned how the great clan descended from an emperor is living at such a low level of life. He responds that if the clan's wealth was inherited, it couldn't last for more than 3 generations, so it wouldn't be any different from an ordinary family. Cao Cao tells him that the fortune he inherited for his family amounted to more than 100,000 blocks of gold, but after his death, the history of the great Cho clan was forgotten. He is shocked to hear what the old man said since those 100,000 blocks would be 375 tons today. Then the old man proposes a deal to the boy, saying that if he continues as he is, his family can prosper for many years. However, if he accepts the help of his ancestors, it would be worth challenging them. The boy asks whom the old man refers to, and he responds that the only wish their ancestors have is the annihilation of the Sama clan. Here, the boy realizes that all the hostility he feels when hearing the Sama surname is transmitted by his ancestors for generations. He refuses, saying that a common person like him couldn't challenge a family with the world's best bloodline, and he also has no knowledge of martial arts. Then the old man calls one of the ancestors, asking him to grant martial arts skills to the protagonist. This ancestor accepts, referring to the old man as Patriarch, which confuses he because he doesn't know whom he's talking to. The Patriarch reveals that this man is the sword god Cheon, which surprises he since he's the same person his brother spoke about a few minutes ago. Cheon, amazed by everything he could see in the boy's memories, hopes that with the help of his ancestors and his great intelligence, they can challenge the Sama clan. He accepts the deal with a big smile on his face. Hours later, both boys arrive at the city of Hefei, where the Nambang clan is located. Inside the city, the boys get excited to see such a large and crowded place. He compares his past life with the present one, saying that in his past life, people were colder and more distant, but in this era, he is surprised to see that people have no problems socializing with strangers. The boys approach a gathered crowd watching an exhibition match, and they talk to an old man who is also watching the match. He tells them that the match tells the story of how the great celestial swordsman defeated the celestial blood demon from the south. But a group of boys start bad-mouthing the match, saying it's a hoax because it wasn't the celestial swordsman who defeated the demon, but the great celestial thunder swordsman who took care of the demon. These boys mock the people watching the match, who turn to boo them but remain silent when they realize who they are. However, He's older brother doesn't stay quiet and angrily shouts at the group of boys, making them angry. An argument starts between the boys from the Jo clan and the elder brother of the Cho clan about who actually killed the demon. Both give different versions of the story, but one of the boys from the Jo clan becomes violent. To prevent a fight, he intervenes in the discussion and takes his brother away to avoid a confrontation in front of so many people. In the room they rented at the inn, he scolds his brother, telling him that he had promised not to start any trouble during their journey, yet the first thing he did was pick a fight with one of the city's largest clans. The older brother just hangs his head in shame, realizing that he may have jeopardized He's plans. He then mentions that if He's plan succeeds, he would be promoted to the position of Murin leader, a high-ranking position in all of Anhui. The boys are interrupted by a friend of He's, an old merchant who came to visit and discuss He's plan with the Nambang clan. He asks the old merchant to tell him everything about the Nambang clan, as the information in the martial storm journals is not specific enough. He needs more concrete information, such as the current state of the clan and personal details of its members, including any corruption they may be hiding. The merchant tells He that such high-level information is beyond the reach of a simple merchant like him. However, he knows someone known as the Night Butterfly, a group of skilled thieves who might have the information he seeks. But getting in touch with them is nearly impossible, and if they agree to help, they will demand an absurd amount of money for the information. He considers other alternatives to obtain the information and asks the merchant how long it would take to arrange a meeting with the Nambang clan. The old merchant responds that hundreds of people go to the clan's house daily to request meetings with its leaders, and more than 70 people leave daily without even getting to see the clan leader. He is impressed by the number of people seeking an audience with the clan. The merchant goes on to explain that once the meeting request is made, the requests are divided based on the social status of the applicants. Those from the upper class, military, or government receive a golden token. The middle class receives a silver token, and members of renowned families can also get one of these tokens. External families or descendants of the clan have priority, and warriors seeking to join the clan and improve their techniques receive a red token. People seeking sponsorship, like He, are given a blue token, the last and lowest priority. The merchant also mentions that it could take several months for He's request to be approved. He wishes He good luck and leaves. He thanks him for all his advice and says that he will go to the Nambang clan the next day to try to talk to their leaders. The next day, He's brother is the first to wake up and tells He that he will return later after finishing his morning training. As the boy leaves, Ancestor Cheon asks He when he will go to the sword tomb so that he can pass on all his martial arts knowledge. He quickly calculates that it will take about 5 months to reach the sword tomb, which is too long, and he can't guarantee that they won't encounter bandits or that his horse won't be injured along the way. Ancestor Cheon exclaims that he cannot wait for too long, and if it were so easy to teach everything with words, he would have done it years ago with other descendants. He knows that he can't miss the opportunity to learn martial arts from the great sword god, so he asks his ancestor for some time to hold the meetings with the Nambang clan. The ancestor mentions that martial arts training starts at the age of 5, and he is about to turn 22. If he keeps waiting, it will be too late, as his body will become rigid, and the meridians in his body will close. The ancestor then tells He that he will use his body for a few minutes to expand his energy and develop him as a martial artist. Reluctantly, He's ancestor Cheon takes over his body and begins to unleash the innate chi within him, causing his muscles to expand, giving him the perfect body for a martial artist. Concerned, He tells his ancestor that he has heard that using one's innate chi could reduce the remaining years of life. The ancestor responds, asking what the problem is with reducing his life by 10 years, leaving He both worried and surprised by such a statement. Ancestor Cheon leaves the boy's body, causing him to return and feel unbearable pain due to the abrupt amplification of his energy channels and muscle expansion. The pain is so intense that the boy faints for a few minutes. Upon awakening, he notices a significant difference in his vision, which has been enhanced, allowing him to see much more clearly and at greater distances. His physical strength has also increased, and after testing his new abilities, he decides it's time to go to the Nambang Palace with his brother. At the entrance, they register their names, and they are assigned one of the 4 tokens. Since they are there for sponsorship, they are given blue tokens. They head to the hospitality hall, where they have to wait to receive their tokens. From a distance, the boys spot the old man they met the other day, so they decide to approach and greet him, apologizing for leaving without saying goodbye. The old man, happy to see them, reassures them not to worry and calls the hall's supervisor, ordering him to give both boys a gold token. The supervisor tries to object, stating that it goes against the rules to allow outsiders into the regular hall of the palace, not to mention the main hall where the old man wants them to be taken. The old man gets angry and exclaims that while the other young warriors of the clan waste their time, these two young men were the only ones who stood up to the annoying brats of the Jegal clan, defending the honor of the people of the South. The supervisor accepts the old man's orders without protesting, and both brothers look into each other's eyes and get excited because, thanks to the incident caused by the elder brother, they managed to secure a direct meeting with a member of the Nambang clan. The brothers are taken to the grand hall of the palace, where one of the boy's ancestors recognizes one of the paintings in the place, saying that it was painted hundreds of years ago. The boy is also amazed because, if what his ancestor says is true, the painting would be around 1,000 years old and still perfectly preserved. He says this out loud, and the elder who was entering the room is moved by the young man's words. In his 80 years of life, he couldn't find anyone who recognized that painting, so he asks the boy which academy he attended. The ancestor tells him to respond that he is a descendant of Man Sangjo. Upon hearing this name, the elder decides to believe the boy's words, as Man Sangjo was a great researcher and the one who found the painting before his eyes. Two other elders enter the hall, wondering about the chaos and why the teapot was on the floor. The first elder responds that they were just talking about a famous researcher, and he got so excited that he dropped the teapot. The smaller elder notices he and offers to take him as his disciple since he noticed that all of the boy's key points had been opened, even though there were no signs of him ever wielding a sword. The three elders get excited because they might be facing a genius who, with the right training, could achieve the absolute bond, a level of power that few warriors throughout history have attained. They try to convince the boy to change his surname and become part of the Nambang clan. He feels very tempted to accept the proposal to change his last name to Nambang, as with that surname, no one could refuse to do business with him. This makes his ancestors furious since the boy is willing to change them for money, and they threaten him, saying that if he accepts that deal, they will possess his body. But his internal debate is interrupted by Hyuk, who was indeed willing to change his surname and give everything he has to become the sword of the clan. The elders see the boy kneeling, begging to be accepted into their clan. The stoutest elder tells him that he has good form and his ability is that of an average warrior, and they already have many of those in the clan, so they don't need him. He interrupts them, saying that he couldn't change the surname his ancestors gave him so easily. The elder then suggests making him an indirect disciple of the Nambang clan. The boy asks his ancestors if he can accept that request since he needs the Nambang clan to fulfill his objectives, and as an indirect disciple, he wouldn't have any problems keeping his surname. The ancestors discuss the situation and agree to let the boy become an indirect disciple of the Nambang clan. The boy bows to the eldest of the three elders, offering greetings to his new master. The elder proceeds to outline the conditions he must fulfill as his disciple. First, not to tarnish the name of the clan. Second, to ignore them when the clan is in danger. And finally, to present himself when summoned by the clan. After accepting the conditions as a disciple, the boy's master asks him where he learned those techniques without belonging to any important clan since his body shows no signs of martial arts experience. He asks his ancestors what he should respond in that situation, but everyone remains silent except for Cheon, who had only spoken recently to open his Kai channels. Since the boy can't reveal the truth, and Cheon never had any children, he can't say that he is a direct descendant. So, the ancestor suggests that he tells the elders he learned from a hidden master who taught him those skills. The boy tells exactly that to the elders, but they get angry, thinking he's playing with them. He uses his words to persuade the elder, stating that he knows nothing about his family, so he can't be sure what kind of techniques they know. He challenges the elder to a verbal martial arts combat, an idea proposed by Cheon himself. Verbal martial arts are combats where warriors comment on the type of skills and techniques they will use during the fight. The elder agrees to have a combat using verbal martial arts, and they seem evenly matched in strategies, but the elder is defeated as it was the god of the sword, Cheon Cho, who was telling he which techniques to use and how. The elders are astonished that their eldest brother lost to an inexperienced young martial artist. The elder admits defeat and asks for a rematch, but he loses again and again. After 13 consecutive defeats, the elder recognizes that the boy has studied the perilous sword techniques tirelessly and seems to have mastered them to perfection. He asks the boy for some time to learn them as well. He tells him they will fight again in 2 weeks, and excited, the elder leaves the place running very fast. In his mind, the boy wonders what would have happened if the elder had known that he was actually fighting with the god of the sword, Cheon Cho. But his thoughts are interrupted by his brother, who puts his hand on his shoulder with an angry expression, asking him what he is. At the end of these verbal combats, he and the elder agreed on a rematch that will take place in 15 days. Afterwards, they leave, but not before telling the young man to stay in the place where the encounter happened until then. After that, the youngest of the three elder brothers suggests that he should introduce a girl to the protagonist after seeing his immense potential and calling him a prodigy. The other elder brother proposes his granddaughter, Sosa, as a candidate, and they set out to find her together with Hee, despite his engagement. During the wait, the impatient young man comes across various traditional instruments of the place, and one of them catches his attention above the rest, a stringed instrument resting in one corner of the place. Unable to contain himself, he begins to play the instrument with grace and ease, much like he used to do with his guitar in the past. His demonstration is interrupted by the beautiful granddaughter of the second Nambang brother, Sosa. Impressed by the boy's ability to make the instrument stand out without any accompaniment, Sosa kindly asks Hee to teach her how to play like him. This leads to an interaction through music that flows naturally and gracefully, highlighting a natural chemistry between them. After the session, the brother of Hee's master asks him what he thinks about the girl, and he responds that she seems to be a very beautiful girl. Later, they say goodbye, and Hee remains in the place where his master told him to stay until their next encounter. Alone, Hee decides to talk to the ancestral sword god in an attempt to learn more about what happened earlier, specifically the part that left the elders astonished. The sword god reveals that it was his special technique, the celestial speed sword, mentioning that it can only be matched by 3 existing styles. The next day, we can see the eldest of the 3 Nambang brothers engaged in a verbal combat against his son, discovering in the process the strategy he used to defeat him. The elder narrates aloud the strategy that the boy had used to defeat him, using great tactics despite employing the lowest of the sword skills in the verbal combat. His son, who had just lost to his father, is astonished by the high level of the person who could defeat the Sword Saint, one of his father's titles, 13 times in a row. Curiously, the son asks who the person was that made his father obsessed with verbal combats. The elder responds that it is a disciple he recently accepted, and in none of their combats could he win against him. The son can't believe what his father is saying because, if true, the person he took as a disciple would be as strong as the legendary 7 martial thrones. The elder assures his son that he wouldn't act that way if the person were that powerful. The one he is talking about is a young man barely over 20 years old. The son thinks his father is lying, but the elder swears on his sword that everything he's saying is true. The son decides to believe his father and accompanies him for a rematch with the young man. Meanwhile, in the palace courtyard, the martial students are in an uproar as the Sword Saint, referring to Bang, has lost to a young man just over 20 years old. As for he feels the atmosphere a bit heavy. The disciples of the place are looking at him strangely, but the atmosphere calms down when Master Bang arrives. The disciples bow before the Grand Master. After the greetings, they decide to start the verbal combat, with the elder requesting the first move. But before they begin, he proposes a bet with the elder. The elder agrees, and he takes out a city map with certain places marked. He tells the elder that if he wins the combat, they will allow him to build inns at the marked locations on the map. The elder accepts the bet, but if he wins, he must change his last name and become the direct successor of the clan. He gladly accepts the elder's proposal, which angers his ancestor Cheon, who decides to go all out in the verbal combat to show the boy that his last name is not to be taken lightly. The combat begins, and initially, both are evenly matched in strategies. However, due to the time limit, the elder starts making mistakes in his moves. Cheon takes advantage of this and delivers the final blow to the elder, securing the victory for his descendant Hee. The elder accepts the boy's victory and, feeling ashamed, asks for more combats. He agrees, and as before, the elder is defeated again and again. He comes to the conclusion that the boy is like a mountain that he cannot surpass using his sword skills. After understanding the situation he faces, Elder Bang reaches enlightenment. He opens his eyes with a blue glow in his body, representing the level his spirit has attained. The elder happily thanks the boy for helping him reach enlightenment. He reminds him not to forget the bet, and the elder orders his son to give the celestial sword plaque to the boy, which will allow him to conduct any business on behalf of the Nambang clan. As a final request, he asks Master Bang to accept his brother as a disciple of the clan. The elder agrees to this last request and calls the Blue Dragon Squadron instructor to accept and impart all his knowledge to the boy. With tears of happiness, Hyuk thanks his brother for fulfilling his dream. He tells him that they may not see each other for a while and asks him to visit their parents at the workshop from time to time. The two brothers bid farewell, and as he leaves the palace, he is applauded by all the disciples present, with everyone requesting that he have combats with them too. However, he simply ignores them and leaves the place. After a long journey, the protagonist is back at the workshop, where he shares the good news with the manager. They manage to fulfill He's longed-for dream of making the Nambang clan their main sponsor. The boy shows the celestial sword plaque to his loyal manager Lee. In addition to the plaque, Master Bang also gifted them several carriages filled with iron ore, with the option to pay for this great investment slowly. The protagonist tells the manager that the next phase of the plan is to create a group of independent merchants representing the Cho family. The manager is left surprised by such news, finding it hard to believe what his young master is saying. Now a conversation between he and the manager of his future business is about establishing his own group of merchants. The merchants' concerns about the difficulty of it due to the city's monopolization by the Dragon Group are later calmed by he, who talks about an equivalent exchange to maintain peace between both groups. Then, a flashback shows a conversation between he and his brother Jongjae, highlighting a small fragment where he confidently and positively talks about his proposal and reveals the new deal the business would have, one without losses and with greater benefits. Continuing with he and the manager's conversation, the young man asks his companion about the estimated monthly profits, to which the answer is approximately 6,000 gold coins, which doesn't surprise he much since he had already estimated a possible response previously. This as if deals with the high-ranking generals go through. Next, he talks about starting a new food business, with the particularity of delivering food to people's homes through the bicycle he designed some time ago. The idea pleases the manager. Lastly, he places an order for large quantities of salt and sugar to create a new dish that would attract the public's attention. Then the scene changes, showing Beck receiving the news about he and his new workshop. He is visibly upset that nobody would have the privilege of owning a celestial sword plaque, a privilege that is only issued every 3 or 4 years. Amidst his anger, Beck decides to make a complaint to the higher-ups. On his way, he notices the absence of the members of the Sun, Blue, and Green Brigades of the Dragon Clan, whom he finds later gathered at the temple. The members explain to him that they are participating in a verbal martial arts tournament, which makes Beck skeptical since such tournaments were forbidden to his knowledge. However, the members reveal that the higher-ups saw something that changed their minds. Someone had awakened the Celestial Eye, an ability that only manifests after perfecting the Dragon Clan's own techniques. Only 10 individuals had achieved this feat before. This time, it was Rascal's turn. Regarding the tournament, Beck would ask who Rascal's opponent would be, revealing Cho Hwi as his rival, which he wouldn't like. He then makes a request to Ryong-ju to obtain all available information about Cho Hwi and his workshop, to which Ryong-ju agrees without any issues. Now the situation would place us in the middle of a conversation between Rascal and the Patriarch of the Dragon Clan, where they would talk about the previous verbal fight against he, highlighting the perfect execution of the 3-element sword technique by the young man, even mentioning that it's the most flawless execution he has ever seen. Before ending the conversation, Rascal would mention that he is not his strongest opponent. There is one more, one he hasn't found yet, showing the desire to keep improving for possible opponents and dangers. The Patriarch congratulates him for his enlightenment. Once again, the scene changes, and we find ourselves at a gathering between various clans at a banquet, with a focus on the young Hwa Seomyong from the Hwa family, a young man with a frivolous and carefree attitude. A young man named Jangho Nambang also arrives, accompanied by his sister Sosa. They are forced to interact with the restless and annoyed individual, especially Jangho, who shows particular displeasure with being at the site. While they talk, Sosa overhears a discussion between a boy and an employee of the place, immediately recognizing He's voice. He is trying desperately to figure out how to get to a specific inn correctly. Later, Jongjae, He's brother, arrives at the place after conducting his business and is furious about the broken deal between them. He complains loudly and shows clear annoyance towards his brother. In addition to this, he reveals that he knows everything about the supposed sworn brothers' profits, pointing out that their relationship is more of a bribe than a brotherhood. Finally, he shows the sword plaque to stop the dispute, which proves successful, and he receives an apology from the place's manager. On the other hand, Jangho is puzzled by He's possession of the plaque, asking him to show it to him, but Sosa stops him and explains that it belongs to someone famous and important in their family. She mentions that he is a martial artist who defeated their first grandfather in hypothetical duels, leaving him astonished. Seeing the boy's discontent, he tries to avoid the situation and leave, but Jangho interrupts him to challenge him to a duel, attracting the attention of the ancestral sword god, who praises him a bit, noting his outstanding level at such a young age and expressing interest in fighting him, finding it intriguing to crush him in a duel. Due to the previous confrontation between Jangho and He, the ancestor decides to intervene in the predicament to help He. He instructs He to follow his words precisely and repeat each one without modifications, thus starting a verbal duel against young Jangho. During his monologue, He is able to decipher and reveal some aspects of Jangho, scolding him for neglecting many basic aspects of his family's martial arts and making him realize that he has lost sight of one of the most important aspects. Because of this, Jang Ho sees He as a martial arts master thanks to the wisdom and words of the ancestor. He offers He a table to chat for a while, treating him with utmost respect. Before leaving, He is interrupted by his brother, Jongjae, who attempts to salvage their relationship. He asks He to calculate some expenses he recently made, and He reluctantly agrees. Quickly, He gives him the results, and his brother, Jongjae, leaves, making it clear they will meet again. Back with Jang Ho, He is about to talk to him, but he is interrupted once more, this time by a boy who introduces himself as Woon Yeagle, who happened to be in the inn. Woon Yeagle is intrigued by the speed at which He did the calculations, so he asks He to teach him his technique. However, due to the difference between arithmetic and modern mathematics, He is unable to make him understand. After all, 0, or nothing, is not a number, so the speed and artifices used by the inhabitants were much more rudimentary. After a while, He becomes so frustrated that he calls Woon Yeagle a bird brain. Due to He's degrading comment about Woon's intelligence, Woon would ask once again what he meant, suspecting from He's evasion that he was calling him an idiot. Because of this, Jang Ho would intervene in the conversation, making some unpleasant remarks that would lead to a new argument with the guest, but they are stopped by Sosa. After this, Jang Ho would call everyone present to eat, noticing at that moment the presence of Hwa Seo Myung in the place. Myung politely asks if he can join the table, and he is accepted without any problem. During dinner, the guests exchange some words, with He introducing himself to Myung, who, despite having met him before, seems not to remember him. Sosa also thanks He for teaching her about the music he plays, which surprises the guests, especially Woon, who is particularly interested in He and his abilities. Because of that, Myung proposes to give He a phoenix fan that would represent him as an honored guest in her family. Jang Ho scolds him again, seeing it as a dishonor. After this, He politely refuses to take it but cannot decline the invitation to a banquet at Mount Hwa, also extended by Myung, accepting it without any hesitation. After a time skip, we find ourselves in a carriage heading to Mount Hwa, with He accompanied by Sosa, Jang Ho, Myung, and the person who invited him. During a part of the journey, He pays particular attention to Myung's stories, jokes, and boasts, while Myung acknowledges He's skills despite his humility. Suddenly, they are interrupted by a warning from one of their workers, informing them that the road is blocked by a specific flag with a bear-shaped logo. They have been ambushed by the Hurricane Squadron of the Crimson Bear. Ready for the fight, Jang Ho orders his troops to take an offensive posture, signaling the prelude to the upcoming battle. Jang Ho orders his Nambang clan men to form combat formations, while on the other hand, Woon asks his warriors to use all kinds of seals for the battle. Both of them display military strength to attack the bandits who were ambushing them. He's Ancestral Emperor is surprised by the troop deployment made by these two young men, showing his respect to the Nambang clan as they have been able to develop good combat strategies over time. Then, Jang Ho gives the order to attack the bandits, and just as their weapons are about to clash, they are interrupted by a tall and muscular man who shouts at Jang Ho and Woon's group to stop the fight. Jang Ho mistakes him for the king of the mountain bandits. The man, somewhat annoyed by the comment, exclaims that he is far too young to be compared to that old man. Jang Ho, somewhat confused, asks him disheartenedly about his age. The man smiles and replies that he is just 17 years old. Everyone is surprised by what this young man has just said. He is even younger than he and all the others present. Jang Ho tells him that he doesn't believe the lie he just said, and then the leader of the mountain bandit squad steps forward to tell Jang Ho that the young man is Zhang Yilong, a disciple of the great king of the bandits, and he confirms his age to them. Zhang smiles gently at the enemy group, saying that if they heard what Leader Kong said, it would move Sosa, who would comment on how cute the young man is, and he would silently judge the girl's taste. Woon steps forward, yelling at Zhang, calling him ignorant because they were ambushed first, and now he is staging this theater. He scolds Zhang, saying that the sealing stones they used are very expensive to be wasted on this little prank. Leader Kong responds that they were only following their great king's orders, which were to escort the young Zhang, and they had no intention of fighting them. Woon understands that Zhang is in charge of the bandit troops, so he addresses him formally and asks if he is aware that raising their flags before the Nambang family could have cost hundreds of lives on both sides if he had arrived late to stop the confrontation. Zhang replies to Woon, saying that they will not let proud and prestigious students like them pass, accusing them of unsheathing their swords at the sight of a mere signal, and questioning if the political faction is now engaging in harassing mountain bandits. Jang Ho joins the discussion, stating that no matter if the bandits are martial artists, They cannot escape being unpleasant people who intimidate and rob others. Furious, Jang Ho unsheathes his sword to attack the group of bandits in front of him. He tries to stop him, saying that the purpose of the discussion is to listen to both sides without resorting to violence. Jong complains about the stereotypes that other clans have about the mountain bandits and mentions to Hee their most important rule, which is to never raise their weapons unless it is against a bandit or in self-defense. This rule has been maintained for 200 years since the time of the Jade Emperor. Jang Ho exclaims to Jong not to talk nonsense, as bandits are despicable people. Jong then asks Jang Ho what difference there is between Nambang leaders and bandits. Woon says that taking power legitimately is different from intimidating and robbing people. Jong then makes a comparison, saying that a person who opens a business and later becomes very successful will make people not buy from the competition and kneel before the successful merchant to buy their higher quality products. The people who do not support this merchant will be treated differently, so following the logic of the two young men, merchants should forget their rivalries. But because of parasitic citizens like them, they couldn't, and then one of the two becomes rich, and the other surrenders to the competition. Jong assumes his role as a bandit, telling the two young men that proud and prestigious people like them do things in the name of honor, accustomed to going to war against others. He also says that unsheathing their swords and robbing others is not very different from what they do. He, who had misjudged Jong, thinking that bulky people like him are usually not very intelligent, realizes that this case is different because the young man proves to be quite clever and witty. He leaves Jang Ho and Woon speechless with his words, and after being silent all the time, he intervenes in the conversation, saying that Jong is wrong about something. He would tell the young man that the laws of the bandits are imperfect, mentioning that their laws have existed for over 200 years, but just 7 years ago, a group of bandits from the Green Forest, the region where the bandit fortresses are located, had attacked the commoners in the Anhui region, stealing the food the government had given them to survive difficult times. The young man reveals that his father was one of the victims of this atrocity, and many villagers were beaten and robbed of their precious belongings, while others met an even worse fate and were killed by the bandits, who, according to his investigation, were associated with the Green Forest. He then exclaims to the young man that he serves a bandit king since all the bandits commit atrocious acts, violating their own laws, and many others perform horrible deeds in the name of the Green Forest. He tells the young man that perhaps the bandits and politicians do similar things to achieve what they want, but unlike the bandits, the Nambang clan protects the citizens, making them smile and feel confident in their presence, while just hearing about the bandits terrifies any commoner. Jang Ho feels flattered by Hee's words, but he also mentions that there are arrogant people in their factions who abuse their power to assert their importance, referring to their first encounter with Jang Ho, which makes Jang Ho feel bad about the boy's words. After hearing Hee's words, Jong throws his green blood cloak to the ground. This cloak is one of the most valuable treasures among the bandits. Jong expresses his discontent with the bandits in front of both sides and decides to leave them to join the Nambang clan. Jang Ho steps forward, saying that even though Jong has renounced his bandit title, he still looks like one with his robust appearance and rude language. He tells the young man that if he wants to join, he would need to show a letter of resignation from the bandits signed by the bandit king himself or have a letter of recommendation from a direct member of the Nambang clan, making it quite difficult for Jong to join. But Jang Ho didn't count on his little sister's peculiar tastes, as she agrees to sign a letter of recommendation for Jong to join the Nambang clan. And so it happens, officially, Jong had left the bandits to join those who were his enemies just a few seconds ago. After this small setback, the group continues their journey in their carriages, now with an extra member. Meanwhile, the bandits, who had witnessed the scene, still didn't understand the young man's decision. They decide to follow Jong because returning without him to the bandit king would mean death for them. They couldn't attack them to prevent the young man from joining since that would lead to a fight they would lose. After a few hours of travel, somewhat uncomfortable with the presence of their new companion, Jong manages to establish a relationship with the rest of the group. Being the youngest among them, except for Sosa, he treats them all as his older brothers, and he treats the girl as his little sister. Then they arrive at the first meeting point of the Hwasan clan, where they would spend the night while the guards checked their luggage before departing the next day. Myung pops her head out of the carriage window and sees another group like theirs, but with muscular men. Jang Ho expresses his discontent with having to travel with those muscle heads again. Jang Ho would express his discontent knowing he has to travel with those brainless muscle heads. On the other hand, Jong, who also sees these men, feels admiration for them because they believe only in strength. These muscular men belong to the Hebei Pang clan, a warrior clan that believes solely in strength and their spears. For them, swords are inferior, and using cheap tricks is a dishonor. The new leader of the clan, Pang Gak, a tall and robust young man like Jong, would show his annoyance upon learning that members of the Yeagle and Nambang clans were at the inn since, to them, they are weaklings with swords. Upon seeing the leader of the Pang clan, Jong challenges him to a strength fight, without using internal energy, and with 3 rounds. The leader, impressed by Jong's physique, accepts the duel. Chaos ensues among the Pang clan members as one of the supposed weaklings is winning against their leader. In a desperate move, the leader uses internal energy and defeats Jong. Jong realizes this and expresses his disappointment to the Blade King Gak, leading to everyone present booing. He talks with his ancestor, the Sword God, about the Pang clan's rivalry against martial arts. The ancestor gives him a lecture about the strengths and weaknesses of swords and spears, explaining that it all originated from palm and fist techniques hundreds of years ago, which humans copied from animals. Over time, martial arts of swords and spears developed, but clans like Pang focused more on using brute force, despising sword users. The ancestor emphasizes that it's not about which is better, martial arts or brute force, but there should be a balance. However, due to their rivalries, they will never reach their full potential. Gak overhears the conversation he was having out loud and misunderstands the situation, thinking the boy is belittling his clan's strength, so he decides to challenge him. Jang Ho intervenes, stating that Gak has no right to challenge them since he lost to one of their new recruits. Woon proposes walking to the Dragon Summit so that the 5 great families can gather on this journey. On the way, Jong and Gak become friends and compete to see who reaches the summit first. It is also revealed that Woon is a girl. After a few minutes of walking and climbing the mountain, they arrive at a shrine where the elderly caretaker welcomes them and gathers them with the rest of the families. They all greet each other formally and talk about the upcoming event between the 5 important families. Jong, who was wandering around, finds he and chats with him, asking who he is since he doesn't belong to any family nor is he a warrior. He responds, saying he's just a simple merchant accompanying the Nambang clan. The boy starts asking some uncomfortable questions about his earnings and why rich people make such a fuss about preparing food. He contrasts the banditos' simple diet of meat and bones with their hands and mouths. He, about to say something about Jong's annoying behavior, comes up with a brilliant idea. And that's how the first part of this manhwa ends. If you have reached this part of the video, let me tell you that you have been one of the few people to make it here. So comment the word rich in the comments. Remember to subscribe to not miss any videos. With that said, see you in the next video.